Everyone on YouTube is telling you that you can learn a language in your sleep. Watch TV and YouTube videos in Spanish, scroll Instagram and TikTok, download an app and tap through colorful exercises for 5 minutes a day, and you'll be fluent before you know it. Effortless, easy, the lazy way. And you believe them. Because why wouldn't you? It sounds great. So you tried it, you put on the foreign TV shows, you watched hundreds of hours of drooling Spanish, and months later, maybe a year later, you still can't hold a basic conversation. You still can't find the words when you need them. Here's the truth nobody in the language learning space wants to say out loud. These methods didn't fail because you weren't consistent enough. They failed because they were never going to work. They weren't designed to work, they were designed to feel good. There's a difference. Today I'm going to give you the real method, the one that actually works. And I warn you up front, it's not going to sound as sexy as learn while you sleep. It requires real daily effort. But it's only 30 to 60 minutes a day, and it works for any language. And if you follow this plan for a year, you will be fluent. Not kinda fluent, not I can order some food fluent, genuinely, confidently fluent. So stay with me for the next few minutes because I'm going to break down exactly why the popular methods fail, what your brain actually needs to acquire a language, and then I'll walk you through a complete daily routine you can start today. By the end of this video, you'll have a real plan, a learning plan that actually works. Let's get into it. And let's start by destroying some myths, because until you understand why the conventional approaches fail, you'll keep falling back into them. Myth number 1 is that grammar is the foundation of fluency. This is the biggest lie in language education, and it's been drilled into us in school. Grammar textbooks, conjugation tables, fill in the blank exercises, and yes, grammar matters eventually, but here's the problem. Grammar is a description of a language, not the language itself. When you're standing in front of a native speaker and trying to communicate, you are not running a grammar check in your head. You're reaching for words. And if you don't have the words, the grammar is completely useless. A person who knows 3,000 words and no grammar rules at all will always outperform a person who knows 500 words and perfect grammar. Always. Vocabulary is king. Full stop. Myth number 2. Immersion means passive exposure. This one is responsible for millions of wasted hours. People hear immersion and they think it means surrounding yourself with the language. Watch Netflix in the language. Listen to podcasts you don't understand. And somehow, through osmosis, the language will seep into your brain. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. Passive exposure to a language you don't understand is just noise. Your brain simply filters it out. Real immersion means active, effortful engagement with the language. Content you actually understand, at least enough to extract meaning and push slightly beyond your current level. And we'll get into exactly how to do that. The next myth is that you shouldn't speak early. This one is popular in online language learning communities. You need a silent period. You're going to ruin your accent. Don't speak until you're ready, etc. This is terrible advice. You should start speaking from day 1. Embrace the embarrassment because you're going to feel it at some point anyway. Speaking practice is absolutely essential, and the more you do it, the better. Yes, if you speak early without knowing the right pronunciation and the right vocabulary, you'll make lots of mistakes. But you can fix that later easily. You don't need thousands of hours and years of study. No, you need the right method applied consistently. 30 to 60 minutes a day of focused, structured practice, doing effective exercises. This will get you to fluency in 12 months for most major languages. You don't need 10,000 hours of comprehensible input, and you don't need years and years of studying. I'll show you exactly how to do it, step by step. But before I give you the method, you need to understand how your brain actually acquires language. Because once you understand this, everything I'm about to tell you will make complete sense. Your brain stores language in 2 different memory systems. The first is declarative memory, which is where facts live, vocabulary definitions, grammar rules, things you study consciously. When you memorize that bonjour means hello, that lives in declarative memory. And the second system is procedural memory. This is where skills live. Riding a bike, typing, driving a car, dancing to reggaeton, things you do automatically without thinking. And here's the crucial insight. Fluency lives in procedural memory, not declarative memory. When a native speaker speaks, they are not consciously retrieving words from a mental dictionary or assembling sentences according to grammar rules. It's automatic. It's procedural. And the only way to build that kind of automaticity is through massive, repeated exposure combined with active production practice. This is why traditional studying feels productive, but produces really slow results. Memorizing vocabulary lists builds declarative memory. But declarative memory has a retrieval delay. You know the word, you just can't think of it fast enough in a real conversation. Procedural memory is instant. So everything in this method is designed to move language from declarative memory into procedural memory as fast as possible. That's the goal. That's what we're optimizing for. Keep that in mind as I walk you through each step. The first and most important step in language learning is building your vocabulary. You need to build a vocabulary base as fast as possible. And the fastest proven method for this is mnemonic associations, mental images. Here's how it works. Your brain is terrible at remembering arbitrary connections, like the fact that the Spanish word loro means parrot. There's nothing about that word that tells you it means parrot, so your brain doesn't remember it. But your brain is really good at remembering vivid, bizarre, emotional images. So let's use that instead. Take loro, parrot. What does loro sound like? Lord if you're American. Like the Lord of the Rings. So you picture Gandalf with a giant parrot on his shoulder, like a pirate. Close your eyes and visualize it. The more ridiculous and vivid these images are, the better they stick. Once you visualize it, you're not forgetting it. Now go do the same thing with 30 more words. And with some practice, you can do 50 or 100 a day, easily. If you do this consistently, you can learn over 10,000 words in 1 year, easily. This is native level vocabulary. But learning words once is not enough. You have to review them as well. Here's how you do it. For every word you learn this way, you create an example sentence, a real sentence using that word in context, and you build a playlist of these sentences. A playlist that you can listen to every day while commuting, cooking, working out, things like that. And this passive review will cement the words without requiring extra study time. Start with the most frequent words in the language, the top 1,000 most common words in any language, which cover 80 or 90% of everyday conversations. And once you know those, learn the top 2,000, then the top 3,000, and so on. Once you get to 3,000 words, everything else will be easy. One practical note though, don't spread yourself too thin across random vocabulary. Learn by frequency and by relevance. Learn the words that you actually need. If you like to talk about food and traveling in your native language, those are the topics you should prioritize for vocabulary. Always learn first the things that you need the most. We'll come back to this later when I talk about language islands. Next step is pronunciation. Most people treat pronunciation as an afterthought. They focus on vocabulary and mostly grammar, and they imagine pronunciation will improve naturally over time. Spoiler alert, it won't. Not without deliberate practice. And bad pronunciation is a serious problem. Not just because people won't understand you, but because if you can't recognize how words actually sound in the mouth of a native speaker, you won't be able to understand either. But here's the good news. Pronunciation is a physical skill. It's muscular. Your mouth, your tongue, your jaw, they need to learn new positions and movements that often don't exist in your native language. And like any other physical skill, it responds to deliberate repetition. The drill is simple and takes 5 minutes a day. You take sentences pronounced by a native speaker in the target language and you repeat them aloud. You play it back and you speak along with it simultaneously. And you try to match not just the words, but the exact rhythm, intonation, and speed of the native speaker. You are mimicking, not translating, like an actor learning to do an accent. Do this every single day. Just 5 minutes a day is enough. And your ear will start to calibrate to the sounds of the language. And your mouth will start to build the muscle memory for producing these sounds correctly. And after a few weeks, you will notice a dramatic difference in both your pronunciation and your listening skills, because they are deeply connected. The better you can produce the sounds, the better you can recognize them when someone else produces them. And which content should you shadow? I recommend you use natural native speaker content, not slow, learner-targeted audio. Slow audio gives you a false sense of security, a false sense of what you know and what you don't know, of what the language actually sounds like. You want your ear trained on real speech from day one. Which brings me to the next step, listening. Once you know the 2,000 or 3,000 most common words in the language, you're ready for a very important phase of language learning. Massive listening to real native content. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by real native content. I don't mean shows designed for language learners. No drooling Spanish. I'm not talking about slowed down teaching audio. I'm talking about podcasts made by native speakers for native speakers on topics you actually care about. Sports, history, business, politics, whatever you would listen to in your native language. Find the equivalent in your target language and listen to it obsessively. And at first, this will feel impossible. You'll think they speak too fast, and they'll use slang, and they'll talk over each other, especially if they're Spanish. And you'll understand maybe 40 or 50% only. That's fine. That's the point. Here's the right way of doing it. Before you listen to a new episode, read the transcript and get familiar with the vocabulary. Then read and listen at the same time. Listen to the same episode several times, across multiple days. Your brain will start filling in the gaps. Words you memorized with mnemonic associations will start appearing in context. The speed that felt impossible at first will start feeling normal. And this is where fluency really starts to build. Not from studying and not from casual exposure, but from massive, repeated, active exposure to real language being used at real speed by real people talking about real things. The goal is an hour of listening per day. I know this sounds like a lot, but most of it you can do it while you do something else. Your morning commute, your workouts, your lunch break. You're not adding an hour of work to your day. You're simply replacing another podcast or music with podcasts in the language you're learning. And finally, let's talk about speaking. This is the technique that separates people who become genuinely fluent from people who can understand but can't speak. I call them language islands. And they are the single most powerful speaking fluency tool I know. Here's the idea. Most language learners barely practice speaking. In real life, a huge part of speaking is initiating. Talking about yourself, telling stories, explaining your opinions, describing your life. Language islands are personalized phrase libraries built around the things you actually talk about. So every day you write 20 or 30 sentences in your native language on topics you naturally discuss in conversation. Things you usually say, like introducing yourself, talking about your job, describing your hometown, ranting about politics, that embarrassing story with the ladyboys in Bangkok, the things you normally talk about. You write all of that down and you translate it into the target language. You create audio files for them and you learn them the exact same way you learned the most common words, with lots and lots of repetition, lots of reviewing. You build a playlist of those sentences and you listen to them daily. You shadow them and you internalize them so deeply that they become automatic. And after 6 months of this, you'll have thousands of sentences that are specific to your life, your personality, and your conversational habits. And when you get into a real conversation with native speakers, those sentences will be right there, ready to use. You won't have to think of the grammar. Everything you need to say will just be there. This is what fluency really feels like. Having the sentences available whenever you need them. Language islands build fluency systematically. Let me put all of this together into a daily routine you can actually follow. This is 30 to 60 minutes a day, every day, for 12 months, and you will be fluent. First, 15 minutes of vocabulary. Create 30 new mnemonic associations, and review yesterday's words by reading and listening to your example sentences. If you want faster results, push this to 50 or 100 words a day. Next, speaking practice for pronunciation and fluency. Shadowing. At least 5 minutes. Take the audio file of your sentences and listen and repeat. Match the rhythm, the intonation, and the speed. This is non-negotiable. Do it every single day. The more the better. Third, massive listening. An hour or two, but most of this you can do it passively while you do something else. First, listen to your sentences on loop over and over again until you know them by heart, and then listen to native speaker content. Find podcasts or YouTube channels on interesting topics and simply listen to them. Your comprehension will quickly improve by doing this. And fourth, language islands. 5 to 10 minutes per day. Write 20 or 30 new sentences every day about something you want to actually talk about. Translate those sentences, create audio files, and add them to your review playlist. Total time, half an hour to an hour, plus passive listening during the day. That's it. Do this every single day for a year, and after 12 months, you will have over 10,000 words that you not only understand, but you can actually use. Your ear will be calibrated to real native speech. Your mouth will have the muscle memory for correct pronunciation, and you'll have thousands and thousands of personally relevant sentences ready to use in conversation. That's what fluency is, built one day at a time. And before we finish, I want to take 1 minute to address something honestly, because I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't. Most people who try this will quit within the first couple of weeks. Not because it doesn't work, but because it's hard to keep doing the work when you haven't seen results yet. So give it at least a couple of weeks of hard work. I promise you'll get results really quickly, but don't quit in the first couple of weeks. If you feel the temptation to switch back to the app that gives you instant rewards and that satisfying streak and those dumbed down comprehensible input YouTube videos, don't. Keep working hard. In a couple of weeks, you'll start seeing real results. And then it'll be much easier to keep going.